Hello everyone and welcome back. So far in the last video, we have created chart of accounts as per the sheet which I shared with you guys in the last video. Now we are going to use these chart of accounts to do some real transactions. So let's start from this first one. So if you read this transaction, it says that the owner invested 500,000 rupees cash along with the computer equipment that had a market value of rupees 120,000 2 years ago but was now worth rupees 100,000 only. So let's do this transaction using the software. So for this, we are going to go into the journal voucher entry screen. Right, so this is the journal voucher entry screen where we are going to perform these transactions. Before we go to the journal voucher, let me just share one more thing with you guys. In the settings section, you can see the verification policy, and you can see that we have not added any verification policy here. So let's add one verification policy first. So this says that this user, and if you have got multiple users, you can set up a verification policy against each user in your system. So I've got only one user configured at the moment. So let's use this user and can verify sales transaction. Yes. And you can then limit the sales verification. So for example, I'm going to say, okay, he can actually verify up to 100,000 rupees worth of sales transaction. And then he can also verify the purchase transactions, and I can use the same limit for this as well. Verify the GL transactions, and then we can put same limit here. Can he verify himself? If he has done the transaction, can he verify his own transaction? So let's give him the authority for that. And that says effective from, so let's say from 14th of April, which is today, until the end of the financial year, which is 30th of June. And let's make this active, and this is the office which we are using this verification policy for. So let's save this transaction. So by saving this verification policy, we now have an active verification policy. If you go to the automatic verification policy, in this you can see that the admin user, he can actually verify the sales transaction, purchase transaction, verify GL transactions, and this is actually already effective. So this means that the automatic verification policy, this verification policy gets created automatically as part of the basic installation. So you don't need to create the auto verification policy yourself. However, the verification policy we have created ourselves. So there is a difference between the automatic verification policy and the verification policy. Automatic verification policy does not require any vouchers to be verified as a separate step. So whenever we are creating a GL entry, it will be verified automatically. So let's keep this is active true for the moment for the first transaction, and then I'll explain how you can actually change this thing to manually verify the transaction afterwards. All right. So now let's come back to the journal voucher entry. So now we are back in the journal voucher entry screen. So depending upon the device that you are using, you can actually expand the view by clicking on this button here. So that will give you more visibility on the screen. So I'm just going to give this a reference number. Let's start with 1 to keep it simple. And in the statement reference, we can put whatever we want. So I've just put the whatever was mentioned here in the description just to see what this transaction was all about. So first of all, what we need to do is we are going to debit our cash. with 500,000. So let's choose the cash account from here. We have chosen the cash account. In the currency, this should be Pak rupees, and we're going to debit this one with 500,000. So let's put 500,000 here, and let's click the add button, and that should add a row here. Now the next one is we are going to debit the computer equipment with 100,000. So let's choose the computer equipment. So the computer equipment is not showing here. Let's have a look why it's not showing. So let's go into the chart of account once again. And this computer equipment, this account is not showing because this is set as transaction node no. So it should be set as yes. So this is my mistake while configuring this chart of account. So I need to go back into the setting, and you can select the transaction node as yes, and then it should appear. So one more thing, while you are setting up the parent account, you need to make sure because of the naming convention that we have used. So this account 101 101, the parent should be 101 100. So this way you can actually make sure that your configuration is absolutely perfect and there are no chances of any errors. So the transaction node was set to no. I have just set it to yes. And now I just need to press the save button. And also in case if you see that the parent account is not listing your desired account, you need to press Control F5 just in case if that has not been updated. So by pressing the Control F5 on the browser, you should be able to refresh this drop down with the account that you have recently created. Right, so we're back in the general voucher entry. So let's create the first transaction. Just going to expand the screen view. So let's give it reference number 1. So we have got cash account, which is going to be debited with 500,000 rupees. And I'm just going to paste the same reference for our record purpose. And we are now going to, we can see the computer equipment account now here showing, and let's debit this one with 100,000. And now we need to credit the capital account, and we have got partner one. So let's assume that this is the partner one who has invested those 600,000 rupees. So I'm just going to credit his account. So let's use this. So now we have got 600,000 as debit and 600,000 as credit. As you can see, it looks good on the screen. So let's now try to save this. And in the cost center, there are different cost centers which are configured by default as part of the installation. So for the moment, let's keep it very simple and let's use the default cost center for the moment. I'll explain in the coming videos how these cost centers are configured and what they are used for. So for the moment, let's keep it simple and let's use the default. And then you can see the total debit and total credit amounts seen here. So by clicking on the post transaction, so this transaction is now posted. So we can now go back to the screen, journal voucher entry screen. So you can see if you try to find this, show this. So this is not actually showing because the date is not coming up correctly. So in here, you need to make sure that this particular date is correctly configured as well. So now You can see that this is the transaction which we have just done. There are certain things that you can perform. If you click on the actions button here, you can see that you can now withdraw this transaction. You can print a GL entry for that, and you can upload any attachments for this transaction. So if you want to add any soft copy of any receipt, like you have got the scan copy of any document which goes along with this transaction, you can browse to that and you can upload that against this particular transaction. And you can also add a new transaction from here. And the most important thing is the printing of this GL entry. So if you click on this print, you can see that this is the transaction, how it look like. So this is the transaction which we have just made. So you can see that every single transaction will have a unique transaction code, which is a barcode, transaction ID, because this was the first transaction ID which we did. This is the office code. Uh, and then we have got book as journal. And then this is the amount which is debited, and this is the amount which was credited in total. So this is the local currency debit, local currency credit. So at the moment, because we have only used same account, which was our local currency account, so this is why the both amounts are actually showing as same. I'll show you an example where we can use different account with a different currency involved. So then you can actually see the impact on the screen here. And these are some summary information about who verified the transaction. And now you can clearly see that the verified by is showing as system, because the transaction was automatically verified by the workflow. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to perform another transaction, but before that, let's switch off the automatic verification policy so that the verifications doesn't happen automatically. So this time I'm going to edit this policy. So let's edit this auto verification policy. I'm just going to disable this by clicking on the is active option and setting it to no. Let's go back to our journal voucher entry screen. Let's add a new one. So the next transaction is that on the same day, April 14th, paid 15,000 cash for the rent of the office space for the month. I'm going to copy this to put under the reference. So now let's give it reference number 2. And for this one, first of all, we need to credit the or debit the. So first of all, we now need to debit our operating expense, which was the office rent. So this is our office rent. So let's choose the currency for this, and this is the 15,000 rupees, which is debit. And because we have used our cash account for this, so I'm just going to select cash account from here, and I'm going to credit this with the same amount. So now you can see that these two transactions, 15,000 for the office rent, which is our operating expense, this is going to be debited, and our cash account, which is going to be credited. Let's choose the same default cost center once again and post this transaction. Right. So, so let's delete this approved from here and let's try to show, and it will show us all the transactions. So now we can see that this particular transaction is unverified. The first transaction that was automatically approved by the workflow, but this one is unverified because we disable the policy to automatically approve the transactions. So now somebody needs to manually approve this. So this means that this particular user who is now logged in as a user, he has got, it is a possibility that he has got no authority to verify the transactions, whereas someone else, another user who is logged in somewhere else, sitting maybe in some other country, he has got the authority to verify all the transactions. So now what that user now need to do, he needs to go to the voucher verification section here. And this user can see that there is a transaction which is unverified. So he can actually look at that transaction as I showed you before. And then what he needs to do, he needs to select that transaction and click on the approve button here. He can also reject this. So let's click on approved, and I'm going to say approved. So now this transaction is finally approved. So if you go back to the journal entry screen and click on the show button by selecting the date, I can now see that both transactions are approved, and this one was approved by the admin. So this user has actually approved this particular transaction. All right, so now we have successfully done our first two transactions. I am now going to pause the video and I'm going to quickly do some other transactions. So let's have a look at those transactions. So the next transaction is on the April 14th, where we have purchased 12,000 additional equipment on credit, which means that we are not going to pay on cash at the same time. However, we are going to use our creditor's account to credit 12,000 rupees with. So I'm just quickly going to enter the details of these transactions and going to pause the video. And once I'm back, you can actually see the screen. Right. So as you can see, I've just done the third transaction on 14th of April, whereby we purchased some more equipment. And this time we purchased that from vendor one, and which is our creditor account. So I've just credited 12,000 rupees. So this is our basically accounts payable. We need to pay this much money, 12,000 rupees, to this vendor for the equipment that I've already purchased. Because the equipment is already in the office, so I've debited that. But I've not done anything with the cash in this transaction because this is just accounts payable that is credited at the moment. So as you can see in this transaction, I have now done this transaction. You can see the equipment purchased for the business use. Okay. So far we have done the first three transactions on 14th of April. So that is it for this particular video. This was the second video for the finance module, and thank you very much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next video now, where we'll continue with the remaining transactions, and I will now in the next video explain how the end of day operation works. Thank you very much. See you soon.